Hello everybody, welcome to part 3 of the blending mode tutorials, and I'm your host Buddy Blackford. We're going to move on to the contrast group of the blending modes. If you haven't seen the previous two tutorials, which should be blending modes part 1 and blending modes part 2, then I highly suggest that you watch those first. So we're going into the contrast group, like I said. And the contrast group is a little different. It's this group right here. It starts with overlay and ends with hard mix. And the contrast groups pretty much take both characteristics of the lighten group and the darken group and put them together to work on the layers in this. They pretty much darken the darkest stuff, brighten the brightest, and then they drop the midtones, which is like gray. So 50% gray, which is right in between black and white, it's gonna drop that right out. So let's get into the first blending mode called overlay. And overlay is a really popular blending mode that you will use a lot. It is a combination of the screen blend mode for the lighter pixels and the multiply blend mode for the darker pixels. And it applies these at half the strength that it does when they're on their own. So it uses 50% 50% screen and 50% multiply is what this uses. Now, the overlay mode calculates this based on the layer below, which is different from most other blending modes. So it's calculating the darknesses based on the layer below that's being affected, that's being added, rather than your active layer that's already selected. Let's head on to soft light. So soft light uses a combination of the screen blend mode and the multiply blend mode, and it's similar to overlay, but the results are more organic-y and it's softer, and it kind of like transparent, almost transparent highlights and shadows is what's going on with the soft light. Now we have hard light, which is next, and hard light uses a combination of linear dodge and the linear burn blend modes. So linear dodge was for the lighter pixels and linear burn was for the darker pixels, and it uses these at 50% as well. It's similar to overlay. It's pretty much the opposite of overlay. And the fact that this blending mode, hard light, uses the active layer this time though instead of the layer below, which is the opposite of overlay. This means that if I switch these layers, then it's going to look like as if I had overlay on top of, it's going to look like this. So if I have overlay right now, remember how this looks like right here. If I switch these layers and then set this top one to hard light, or which one? Yeah, hard light. Let me change this back to normal. It looks like the overlay again. So that's the difference there. Hard light and overlay are basically just the opposite, and I was trying to illustrate that in that one. So let me put these back to normal and put this one back to hard light. Actually, the next one we can go to is vivid light. So vivid light uses a mixture of the color dodge for the light pixels and color burn for the dark pixels, and at 50% for both again. And it's similar to hard mix, but it's like how do you call it? It's exemplified more than hard mix is. Hard light, more than hard light is. So let's go to the next one, which is linear light. So this linear light is like the vivid light. It uses However, it uses the linear dodge blend mode for the light pixels and the linear burn mode for the darker pixels. So it pretty much does what vivid light does, except for with using the linear dodge and the linear burn. Let's go to the next one, and that is pin light. So pin light is a little different. It uses a combination of the light and blend mode and the dark and blend mode at 50% again. So if the dark pixels on the active layer are darker than the dark pixels on the underlying layer, they will be visible. If they aren't, they'll drop away. So if the pixels on the active layer are lighter than the pixels on the underlying layers, they will also be visible. If they aren't, they drop away. So it's a cool blending mode that's different than most of the other blending modes or blending modes that are out there. Let's go to hard mix next, and you can see that hard mix is a little crazy, and it kind of reminds me of Andy Warhol photos or Andy Warhol paintings for some reason. So the hard mix uses a linear light blend mode, and it sets a what's called a threshold. So for each RGB color channel, pixels in each channel are converted to either all black or all white. So then Photoshop does some math and applies it to each separate RGB channel, and a composite channel is created. And remember, the channels of your layers are here. These are the channels. So a composite layer is created, and that composite layer has up to 8 colors in it. You got red, green, blue, cyan, magenta, yellow, black, and white. So it's a kind of a wild blending mode. One of the coolest things about this blending mode, though, is that if you adjust the fill over here and you lower it, more colors are going to start showing up, as you can see here. And then you can create different kinds of looks using this fill slider here. So that's what's really awesome about hard mix. It's kind of you can kind of almost create like every one of the blending modes using it. You can almost do it, but it's not quite. So it's a really cool blending mode. So I'm going to stop there for that, and that was called the contrast blending mode group. And on the next one, we'll go over the other blending modes here, these two bottom ones down here. So let's stop now, and I thank you for watching this tutorial, and I see you on I'll see you on the blending mode number 4 tutorial. Thanks a lot for watching. Goodbye.